everybody, and welcome to another episode of Connect with KB. So great to have you tuning in as we talk about business and education, leadership, and all the wonderful things that connect us to each other. My guest today is serving Western Michigan University as the Assistant Vice President of Government Relations, working with federal, state, and local officials on the interests of Bronco Nation. He is, in fact, a Bronco graduate himself. I want to welcome to the podcast Fred Schaible. Fred, so good to have you with me.
Oh, Kristen, it's great to be here. I know we've been talking for a while about coming on and talking about all things Broncos, so thanks for having me.
Absolutely, and you and I have been friends a long time, and I couldn't be happier about this role that you have at Western Michigan University. It is a hidden gem over in the Kalamazoo region, and I want you to talk about that, but let's first talk about the Fred Schaible story. Tell me who is Fred?
Oh, great. Well, I appreciate that. I'm a farm kid, born and raised outside of Ann Arbor in Saline, Michigan, on a family farm. It's been our family since 1847. Wow. So grew up there. So had a work ethic, I think, instilled at a very young age. It was just me and my older brother, doing chores in the morning before we went to school, and then came back and did more chores. And my mom had a big vegetable garden, so we were always out working. And so I think that work ethic got kind of instilled in me at a young age. But then I also realized very quickly I did not want to be a farmer. I did not like that lifestyle. It was a lot of hard work, and I wanted to go see what else the world had in store. And so, through high school, I started getting involved a little bit more in local politics and local government. I served on the Saline Mayor's inaugural youth council back in, I think it was 2001. And had the opportunity to kind of get my feet wet with that whole process. And so that led to me getting interested in studying political science. I looked at two universities, and two only, MSU and the James Madison program, and WMU, and it's great. It's a great political science program. Didn't get into MSU, got into Western. Mm-hmm. And the rest is history.
Silver lining.
Yep. Uh-huh. So went to Western, did my studies there, got really immersed in campus leadership, student leadership, and doing a number of different roles, orientation leader, RA, that really broadened my horizon. Growing up, I was somewhat sheltered, from the bigger world in a very conservative household, very not really diverse, predominantly white neighborhood, white school district. Going to Western really opened my eyes to a lot of different viewpoints and a lot of different ideas, and that maybe what I'd always known or believed could be questioned or could be looked at in a different, through a different pair of eyes. So Western really taught me that. Got involved in the internship program, which brought me here to Lansing. Interned for then Representative Jerry Koyman from Grand Rapids. To any of the listeners, that ages me a little bit.
Not that much.
Right. And interned with him, and then had an opportunity to go over to Representative Dave Hildebrand's office. Worked for him for a couple years, and then went over to the policy office in the House, and then the policy office in the Senate, and then came back to Dave Hildebrand's office when he was in the state Senate, and worked with him for all 8 years, culminating in his chairmanship of the Appropriations Committee in the last 4 years. And so really just great experiences that then led to my final part of my state career, which was at the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later. But that's kind of me in a nutshell. I'm a very eager person to learn about different people and their pasts and what makes them unique and what drives them and what motivates them. I'm very curious to just know what makes people tick.
Yeah. Well, you have surrounded yourself with some really good people, including Dave Hildebrand. Yeah. And I suspect that he was a great mentor and a great opportunity for you to learn and to really understand, too, about the inner workings, especially on the Appropriations Committee. How beneficial for you that where you are now, it was so advantageous for you to go on that path. Let's talk a little bit about the role. Yeah. What are you doing at Western? So
as Assistant VP for Government Relations, my main goal is to be that public face of Western here in Lansing at the state capitol. Also, I'm doing a little bit of work with our DC delegation, but largely it's focused here on the state. And so it's building those relationships, or not rebuilding, but reacquainting the policymakers and the decision makers, in my new role of advocating for Western. State higher education, or state funding for higher education, still represents the largest, for us at Western, the largest single donor, if you will, right? So State appropriations are very critical to our operations and our functions, and so the state budget process is something we are involved in very closely.
Yeah. Well, as you do that and you kind of reconnect those relationships, isn't it interesting how they led you here and how you go back to people and you do reconnect in that, the business of what you're doing was all about the networking that you had and what you built when you were in the political arena. Yeah.
One of the things, and I don't reflect a lot often on my strengths or my thing. I'd rather focus on other people, right? And how they have improved my life. And so, but one of the things Dave Hildenbrand mentioned in his farewell speech in the Senate was one of my skills or strengths is I know the people, right? I don't necessarily get bogged down in the politics and the mudslinging. I get to know the person and what makes them tick and then try to connect and relate with them. That's just what is missing in this world. We don't take time to get to know the person. We look at a Facebook post or a headline or these micro blasts of information and then take that and judge something, and we don't take the time to get to know the people.
Well, what I think people don't realize about you and I kind of coming through the system is that you might be on separate sides of the aisle at one point in time, but as you continue in your career, you're going to use those people and be with them, or you're going to be on the same side. You're going to work with them again. And so long after the politics is kind of behind you, the relationships are still there. And you're absolutely right. It is about people. And, the thing about your students at Western right now, the relationships and people that they're meeting right now and that they will meet as they kind of get into their careers, they don't realize probably how advantageous that will be to them 25, 30 years from now. So it's a good lesson for people that it is about relationships and not really kind of getting into mudslinging and digging out the dirt of people, but finding the good in people.
Well, and that's exactly right. And that's one of the things that I was excited about. So my boss, Jeff Brenneman, who's our VP of Government Relations and Community Partnerships, he's a member of Dr. Montgomery, who's the president of Western, his cabinet, so he's senior leadership at the university. He had this idea going into the 2020 election that, Kalamazoo was this purple area, right? I mean, it is very much a cross section of the state of Michigan. You've got some solid blue areas and you have some solid red areas. And he was concerned, what were we as a university going to do to promote civility? And so he came up and developed this We Talk program. So wmich.edu/wetalk.
Absolutely. Good for you.
Be sure to go and check that out. And it's all focused on how we, as people of different political backgrounds, different beliefs, can come together and have conversations. It's okay to be different. It's the things that bring us together that make us stronger. And we had Representative Dingell and Representative Upton on campus earlier this summer for their civility tour, where they talked about bipartisanship and they talked about the Problem Solvers Caucus and these things that are, I think, the average American expects from their government.
Right. And the thing is that we should share with the listeners that they are coming from two totally different parties.
Yes.
And I've really admired that too in regards to one, the very authentic friendship that they have, that they do see that, they don't always align, but they have really been respectful of each other. And I think that those opportunities for people to see people coming together from across the aisle is very, very powerful. I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, that's good.
I wanted to talk about the We Talk because I think that initiative is really, really important, not only at universities, but everywhere, in businesses all across Michigan.
Yeah, and we're a community driver with that too. So while it's focused, on campus for students and faculty, it is something that we extend to the whole community in the region. That's really, I think the important role that universities play is we're not just our campus. There's that town-gown relationship where you are integrated. We represent, we're a major employer in the region. We're a major economic driver. We know what's good for Western is good for Kalamazoo and Southwest and even Western Michigan. We're not Southwestern Michigan University. We're Western Michigan University. So that whole Western Lakeshore is a focus area of ours. And we've got campuses up in Grand Rapids. We're doing some great research with Grand Rapids Public Schools in the education front about changing leadership styles. We landed the largest single federal grant in university history, $29.5 million. That's being spent on working with Grand Rapids Public Schools to help them promote positive leadership changes in how they educate their students. So It's really exciting.
Well, it is exciting. And I think that sometimes these little nuggets are things that people don't hear about and see in regards to the great work that Western does and the opportunities for students. I mean, we talked a little offline. I was taken with the cold case program at Western, and these young people who are in criminal justice and helping the Michigan State Police solve crimes. I think this one was 35 years old, and these young people got to the bottom of it, and then they were featured on the Today Show. Talk a little bit about those types of opportunities, and then even the for you, the change that's happened in regards to education when you went through the system and what you see now.
Yeah, the cold case the story that was in the Arts and Sciences Alumni Magazine is just one example of a bunch of really cool, exciting things. You know, what I really liked about that, and we were talking about before we started recording, was Dr. Ashlyn Kirsten, who was the faculty lead on this program. She was one of my professors in political science when I was at Western. And, you know, there are a few professors at Western who I remember to this day their classes because they had that much of an impact on my critical thinking skills or how I, approached problem solving. And she was one of them. And so now having her there in that role, seeing that she's continuing to do that great work 20 years later, sorry, Dr. Kirsten, if you're listening, but 20 years later, and they're still innovating, they're still doing these things. They're passionate about the work that they do. And I think that's what, is so exciting for me at Western is there is a passion amongst our faculty and our students and our non-instructional staff. They are committed to improving the world and the community in which they live. And so I think Western often gets overlooked because we are a regional, university. We're not one of the big three in the university research corridor, but we're Carnegie ranked. I mean, we're research intensive. We have just as much capacity and capability. We're doing some amazing work in PFAS. So for the listeners, I know acronyms are always bad, but PFAS is, that forever chemical that they found over in Grand Rapids, and they're finding it all over the state. And Michigan has really been leading. Started under the Snyder administration. Governor Whitmer's administration has also been continuing the work on it, of really figuring out how do we remediate and remove this really bad chemical from the ground. Matt Reeves on our campus is one of the leading researchers in the nation working on PFAS, and specifically how do we contain it and remediate it and get it out of the ground so it doesn't pose that public health risk.
Well, there's just so many opportunities.
Yep.
This magazine is incredible, by the way, so make sure you tell the team that. But, I had an opportunity to read about a young man by the name of Quinn Heiser, who is a geospatial intelligence but a student in his third year at Western, and had an opportunity to do some work with NASA. I just think that these opportunities for young people are just incredible.
Yep. And so we say, obviously, you got to go where your heart is and do campus visits and go look at the programs, but be sure to don't pass over Western just because you think we're a small regional institution. We've got that big capacity. We've got only one of two aerospace engineering programs in the state. Our aviation college is ranked in the top 3 in the nation. We have the only College of Fine Arts out of all the public institutions. So we really span that whole spectrum of a teacher training institution where we have our roots in 1903 when we were founded. We were a teacher training institution. Now over the last 100 plus years, we've evolved and we've really become that leading world-class research institution.
Well, as you talk about, you mentioned Jeff, and Jeff Brenneman is former congressional staffer for Fred Upton.
Yep.
So, this trajectory for people and where you end up, did you think that this was going to be an opportunity for you 20 years ago when you were a student at Western to think that you would come back?
So if you ask anybody in Lansing, they will say, Fred, from day one when you came to Lansing as an intern at Western, this was your dream job, was to go lobby for Western. After 17 years, I didn't think it was going to happen. The assistant VP spots very rarely open up because they're good jobs, and they're people in those positions. My colleagues from the other universities are passionate about their institutions and the work they do. Didn't think it was going to happen. So back earlier this year, I was over in the House office building here in Lansing, going to a meeting one of my very good friends, Peter Spatafor, was sitting in the lobby. I went over to say hi to him, was talking with him, and he said, that Western job is still open. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. I said, I would have assumed they would have filled it by now, et cetera, et cetera. And so he said, no, you should probably reach back out to them and see, if they can work with you. And I said, all right, I wasn't really necessarily looking for it. I was very much involved in my work at Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. We were just coming kind of out of the pandemic, which had consumed us for a couple of years. And I was excited to see what we could do with the department. But I was also like, well, this is maybe that once in a lifetime opportunity. So I reached out to Sandy Jones,
great.
Another Bronco,
Yep.
Also our multi-client lobbyist here in town who helps amplify our government relations work. And I reached out to her and kind of asked a few questions, and she said, you know what, you need to text Jeff. And so I texted Jeff and said, hey, I hear the position might still be open. And a few meetings later, an interview and a couple of background checks and other things like that.
Oh, you passed.
I passed. And so the rest is history. So yeah, it's all about taking those chances. And I think the one thing that I learned from a personal perspective through COVID was life is too short to just continue on and not look for that next opportunity or that next chance or that dream job. As Pollyanna as that might sound, we have to have some silver lining or something that we strive for. And so the Western job was that. And I'm so excited to see I've been there since May, just a few short months. I'm excited to see what the future has in store, because I really see this as kind of that next chapter in my professional career, that I can do another 17 years of commitment like I did with state government. Absolutely.
Well, again, there are great people there. Please say hi to my good friend Shelley Edgerton, who's on the board at Western Michigan. You mentioned your Department of Military and Veterans Affairs work. Let's just talk a little bit about that and about veterans and getting them into the workforce and where things stand today.
Yeah, I think, before Western, my passion was veterans. And that started really with Senator Hildebrand. So working for Senator Hildebrand, we had the Grand Rapids Veterans Home in his district. And for anybody who's familiar with the Grand Rapids Veteran Home, it's been there since right after the Civil War. Not the current building, but on that campus, there's been a veterans home there since right after the Civil War. About 10 years ago or so, there was a pretty not even 10, less than that, about 5 or 6 years, there was a pretty scathing audit of the home and some of the care standards there. And so the legislature got involved. Senator Hildebrand made it a personal priority of his to get funding to build a new state-of-the-art facility. Timeline-wise, he was done in 18, and the new home wasn't going to be open for a couple of years. I felt a personal commitment to wanting to see it through to the finish. And so luckily, I was able to secure a position with the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency as a policy and legislative person, was able to work with that team, and then through that role evolved up to ultimately being deputy director in the department under General Rogers, who is the adjutant general and the department director. During COVID, it changed everything, right? We were responding to crisis after crisis. And one of the things that I really admire about Governor Whitmer and her leadership was the ability to just always be kind of having to chase that next crisis or that next thing, right? We had a pandemic, then the dams burst, then, thing
well,
after
and these
thing
are the
after
things
thing.
That when you go into be the governor of the state, you don't see these things coming.
Yep.
These are all things that really kind of take you off of the focus of, day-to-day government.
Well, and you normally get one, right? You get one catastrophe. She had like 5, right? And so I think with the leadership team, with General Rogers and his team with the Michigan National Guard, consummate professionals. After the January 6th events in D.C., Michigan sent 1,000 of our National Guard soldiers because we were that well trained and capable to help respond, following those incidents, to help secure the Capitol and make sure the democracy could continue to work. So for me, it was a passion. I never served in uniform. That was never an interest of mine, but serving those who did serve became a passion of mine. And so we've done amazing things between General Rogers, Zanetta Adams, who's the director of the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency, Ann Zerby, who's heading up the homes. Governor Whitmer and the legislature just approved funding for a replacement home up in Marquette So the residents living there will have a brand new facility in about 3 or 4 years. It's just an exciting time because we're investing in a population that often gets ignored. Right. And I think, that's an important thing. The mental health challenges that they face, they have a higher suicide rate within the active duty as well as in the veteran community. We have to talk about these things, and we have to see how we can help and ensure that they get the resources that they need to be taken care of. They fought for us. They fought for our freedom. Now it's our turn, each and every one of our turn, to support them in their time of need.
Do you see yourself staying in this space with them? I mean, in regards to your time, I don't know that you probably have time to do that. But.
No, it is. Yeah. So it's a balancing act. Western actually is a leader. It's been ranked in the top echelons of universities by Military Times as being a veteran-friendly school. So we have one of the larger ROTC programs also on campus. That's the Reserve Officer Training Corps. And so that trains, college students to then become officers in the armed forces. So it's still very much part of my life. Also, our aviation college is located at the Battle Creek Airport. The Michigan National Guard, the Air National Guard, actually has an air base there at Battle Creek. We can see it right across the tarmac. So I'm not going. They're not leaving my heart or my mind. I'll be involved with veterans and military for the foreseeable future.
I just think it defines you about caring for people. And you're in such a great place right now at Western Michigan University. As we kind of wrap up, share with me your greatest lessons, the greatest lessons you've learned in your career. And you kind of mentioned it too about life is short.
Yeah.
What else?
Yeah, I think, Dave Hildebrand really instilled in me very early on that and I think Michelle Obama also kind of had the famous quote of when they go low, we go high. And Dave always told me, take that high road. Don't get pulled into the mud. Don't get pulled down with all the rhetoric and, just the vitriol that we are seeing in this world today. Let's be positive. Let's stay positive, and let's find ways to work together, because when we work together, we're stronger. We can't be focused on what divides us. We have to be focused on what pulls us together and makes us stronger.
You are such a good person. And we have been friends a long time. And I say that because I know you so well. I think it's nice of you to give kudos to Dave, because he too is just such a good person. And you continue along this journey to surround yourself with really good people. And if I can ever be of help to you, I am a Bronco.
Yes.
I got my MPA, my master's from Western Michigan. And it was a great experience for me. But I just want you to know, if I can ever be of help to you, I want you to reach out.
Well, and I think, and Kristen, I really appreciate that. I think, we're made better as people by the people we bring into our lives. And so surrounding ourselves with positive people, with people who can see the good in this world, is important. If we just constantly focus on the negative and pull ourselves down, that's no way to live.
Well, and we don't want to do that. No. I mean, it is. My good friend Deb Muchmore, we always talk about being beacons of positivity. Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right. I don't want to go there. And we don't have to. And if we stick together and we continue to bring everybody else up, I think that we can kind of change the tide a little bit, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming on with me, Fred.
Thanks, KB.
You bet. Absolutely. My guest today, Fred Schaible. He's the Assistant Vice President of Government Relations at Western Michigan University. I also want to thank my supporting sponsors, Dowding Industries, Governmental Consultant Services, AF Group, Public Affairs Associates, and Mercantile Bank. You can listen to all my podcasts at connectwithkb.com. Until we connect again, go live your best life. I'm your host, Kristen Belzer.